Have you ever driven past one of those pristine nursing home buildings with their perfectly manicured lawns and thought to yourself, I wonder what it's really like in there? Maybe you've even whispered under your breath, I hope I never have to find out. If so, you're not alone. There's something about nursing homes that fills most of us with a quiet dread, isn't there? It's like we've all been told the same scary bedtime story about what happens when we can no longer take care of ourselves. But here's the thing, and I want you to really hear me on this. Most of what you think you know about nursing homes is probably wrong. Not because anyone lied to you, but because the real story, the whole story, rarely gets told. It's like looking at a beautiful garden from the street and thinking you know everything about it when you've never actually walked through the gate to smell the roses or feel the soil between your fingers. I know this might feel like a heavy topic. Maybe you're watching this because someone you love is already in a facility, or perhaps you're starting to wonder if it might be in your own future. Whatever brought you here today, I want you to know that having these thoughts doesn't make you weak or defeated. It makes you human, and it makes you wise. Planning ahead and understanding your options, that's not giving up, that's taking control. You see, when we don't know the truth about something, our imagination fills in the blanks. And let's be honest, our imagination isn't always kind to us. It conjures up images of sterile hallways, lonely dining rooms, and forgotten souls sitting by windows. But what if I told you that many of these places are actually filled with laughter, friendship, and people who are living their best lives? What if the real story is so much more hopeful than the one you've been carrying around? The truth is, the nursing home industry has changed dramatically over the past 20 years. While you've been busy living your life, raising families, working, and maybe caring for your own parents, these places have been quietly transforming themselves. They've been listening to families like yours, learning from their mistakes, and creating environments that would probably surprise you. Now, I'm not here to paint everything with rose-colored glasses. There are still challenges, and yes, there are still places that don't meet the standards they should. But there are also incredible facilities doing remarkable things, and there are ways to tell the difference. Ways that no one ever taught you to look for. Over the next few minutes, we're going to walk through some truths that the brochures don't mention and the tour guides don't always share. We'll talk about what really goes on behind those doors, how to spot the red flags that matter, and most importantly, how to find places where people actually thrive. Because here's what I've learned after years of helping families navigate this journey. The right nursing home isn't a place where life ends. It's a place where a different kind of life begins. Think about Mrs. Peterson down the street, who used to worry constantly about falling in her big empty house, and now she's learning watercolor painting and has made 3 new best friends. Or consider how your Uncle Frank, who was so isolated after Aunt Margaret passed, is now the unofficial host of Friday night poker games and helps new residents feel at home. You deserve to know what's really possible. You deserve to understand your options before you need them, not in the middle of a crisis when emotions are running high and time is running short. Because when you know the truth, the real truth, you can make decisions from a place of strength rather than fear. So let's start with something that might surprise you, something that changes everything about how you think about this whole journey. The first thing nobody tells you is that many residents actually sleep better in nursing homes than they did in their own houses. I know that sounds backwards, doesn't it? We imagine these institutional beds and thin walls, but here's what's really happening. Margaret, who hadn't slept through the night in 3 years because she was terrified of falling on her way to the bathroom, now rests peacefully knowing that help is just a button press away. The fear that kept her eyes wide open at 2 a.m. is gone. There's something profoundly comforting about knowing you're not alone in the dark. When you're lying in your own home at night and you hear a strange noise, your heart might race. But when you're in a place where trained professionals are awake and alert just down the hall, where someone actually checks on you regularly, well, that anxiety just melts away.
It's like having the most dedicated family member you could imagine, someone who never gets tired or distracted, watching over you while you sleep.
Another thing that might surprise you is how much more social many people become. I remember visiting Eleanor, who had barely spoken to her neighbors in 15 years of living on the same street. Within 2 months of moving into her new home, she was organizing book clubs and teaching other residents how to knit. You see, when you're struggling to maintain a house, manage medications, and worry about safety, there's not much energy left for friendships. But when all of those daily burdens are lifted from your shoulders, something wonderful happens. You rediscover parts of yourself you thought were gone forever. Think about it this way. When was the last time you had a meal you didn't have to plan, shop for, cook, or clean up after? When was the last time someone else worried about whether the heat was working properly or if the lawn needed cutting? For many people, moving into a quality nursing home is like taking off a backpack they've been carrying for years without realizing how heavy it had become. Now, here's something else they don't mention in those glossy brochures. The staff in good facilities often become like family. Not in a patronizing way, but in the real sense of people who genuinely care about each other's daily joys and struggles. I've seen nursing assistants who remember that Robert likes his coffee extra strong, and that Patricia gets homesick on rainy days. These aren't just employees going through the motions, they're people who chose this work because they genuinely want to make someone's day a little brighter.
But perhaps the most important truth is this: you have more control than you think. The narrative we've all been fed suggests that nursing homes are places where things happen to you, where you become passive and dependent. The reality in good facilities is quite different. Residents often have more choices about their daily routines than they did when they were struggling to manage everything alone at home. They can choose when to wake up, what activities to join, whether to eat in a room or socialize in the dining area. They can decorate their space with their own furniture and treasures, creating a home that feels authentically theirs. The difference between a place where people merely exist and a place where they truly live often comes down to understanding what questions to ask and what signs to look for when you're choosing. Most families focus on the wrong things during their visits. They notice whether the floors are shiny or if the lobby looks impressive. But the residents who are thriving, they're in places where the staff knows their stories, where their individual preferences matter, and where they're treated as the complex, interesting people they've always been. There's so much more to understand about making this choice with confidence rather than fear, about finding places where your story continues rather than simply ending. Here's another truth that changed everything for me when I learned it. The best nursing homes don't just take care of your medical needs, they nurture the person you've always been. I remember meeting Dorothy, a former librarian who thought her love of books was behind her. The activities director at her facility noticed Dorothy's sadness and helped her start a program where she reads to local kindergarten classes via video calls. Suddenly, Dorothy wasn't just a resident with mobility issues, she was Miss Dorothy, the storyteller, who made children's eyes light up every Tuesday morning.
This is what happens when facilities understand that you're not just a collection of medical conditions. You're someone who has loved deeply, worked hard, raised families, survived challenges, and accumulated decades of wisdom. The places that get this right don't see decline, they see potential waiting to be rediscovered. Now, let me share something that might ease one of your deepest worries. You know that fear about losing your independence? About becoming a burden? In the right facility, you might actually reclaim independence you thought was gone forever. When you're not spending all your energy trying to manage a household, when you're not afraid to shower because you might fall, when you're not skipping meals because grocery shopping has become too overwhelming, that's when you can focus on the things that actually bring you joy. I've watched people who hadn't driven in years start taking facility outings to museums and concerts. I've seen folks who had become isolated reconnect with old hobbies and discover new passions. There's something magical that happens when basic safety and care are handled by others. You get to be yourself again, maybe more fully than you have in years. But here's what you really need to know about choosing the right place. Trust your gut more than the tour guide. Yes, look at the cleanliness and check the credentials, but pay attention to the feeling in the air. Are people laughing somewhere in the building? Do staff members make genuine eye contact with residents, or are they just going through the motions? When you visit at mealtime, are people chatting with each other, or is everyone eating in silence? These details tell you more about daily life than any brochure ever could.
And don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. How do they handle someone who's having a difficult day? What happens when residents disagree with each other? How do they support families during the adjustment period? The places that welcome these conversations are usually the ones that have thought deeply about creating genuine communities rather than just providing institutional care. Remember, you're not shopping for a place to give up. You're looking for a place to live fully, safely, and with dignity. The right facility should feel less like a hospital and more like a neighborhood where everyone happens to need a little extra support. I want you to know something important. Thinking about these options doesn't mean you're planning to fail. It means you're planning to succeed on your own terms. Some of the happiest, most vibrant people I know made the decision to move while they were still healthy enough to truly choose, rather than waiting until crisis forced their hand. They were able to settle in, make friends, and create a new chapter of their story instead of just surviving the final pages. Your fears about nursing homes are understandable. They're based on old stories and outdated realities. But the truth is, many of these places have become communities where people laugh, learn, love, and live with purpose. They're places where your morning cup of coffee is made just the way you like it, where someone notices when you're having a tough day, and where your grandchildren can visit a grandparent who is safe, engaged, and maybe even happier than they've been in years.
You've spent your whole life taking care of others and solving problems. This isn't different, it's just another problem to solve thoughtfully and with hope. You deserve to know all your options, to visit places that surprise you, and to make decisions from a place of strength rather than fear. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you had experiences with nursing homes that surprised you? Are there questions you're still carrying about this journey? Your stories and concerns matter, and sharing them helps all of us understand this path better. You're never too old to rewrite your story, and sometimes the most beautiful chapters come when we have the courage to turn the page. Let's keep supporting each other through every season of this beautiful, complicated journey we call life.